Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And first up, we begin with the US-China technology war. The US Commerce Department estimates that Chinese technology giant Huawei will produce no more than 200,000 of its Ascend AI chips in 2025, a relatively small number compared to global AI hardware demand. Speaking at a congressional hearing on yesterday, Commerce Undersecretary Jeffrey Kessler emphasized that despite the limited quantity, the pace of China's progress in AI chip development should not be underestimated. Quote, "It's critical for us not to have a false sense of security," end quote, Kessler said, adding, quote, "China is catching up quickly. We shouldn't take too much comfort in the fact that China's production of these advanced chips is relatively small because we know they have global ambitions," end quote. Kessler also acknowledged that US-made semiconductors, including advanced AI chips, are being smuggled into China and other restricted regions, a direct contradiction to NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang's recent remarks. In May, Huang claimed that there was, quote, "no evidence of any AI chip diversion," end quote. This tension comes as NVIDIA awaits a decision from US authorities on whether a downgraded AI chip designed for the Chinese market will be approved for export. NVIDIA has been lobbying hard, warning of the long-term consequences of ceding access to China's vast AI market. Quote, "If we want the American technology stack to win around the world, then giving up 50% of the world's AI researchers is not sensible," end quote, Huang said, adding, quote, "If all the AI developers are in China, the China stack is going to win," end quote. Echoing this view, ARM CEO Rene Haas cautioned that export controls could backfire by accelerating the development of rival ecosystems. Haas told Bloomberg this week, quote, "If you narrow access to technology and force other ecosystems to grow up, it's not good. It makes the pie smaller." Meanwhile, Huawei founder Zhang Zhongfei has re-emerged in China's state media with a high-profile interview in the People's Daily this week. In the front-page interview, Zhang downplayed Huawei's technological dominance, noting that while the company has made strides, it remains a generation behind the United States in chip development. Quote, "The US has exaggerated Huawei's achievements. We're not that powerful yet," end quote, he said. Huawei's Ascend AI chips have faced scrutiny abroad, but Zhang stressed that Huawei is just one of many promising chip makers in China. Zhang's comments echo rising confidence in China's AI development. Despite heavy US export restrictions, he insisted the country will not fall behind. Quote, "AI may be humanity's final technological revolution," end quote, Zhang said, adding, quote, "Don't worry, China has many advantages," end quote. A view partially confirmed by US officials themselves. Speaking at an event in Washington, White House AI advisor David Sachs conceded that China may only be 3 to 6 months behind the US in AI capabilities, a sign of the narrowing gap in the race for technological supremacy. For anybody in the West concerned about China catching up, the most important thing is to follow the developments through grounded and sober analysis and not succumb to misinformation or propaganda at both extremes. Only then can we be clear-eyed about the challenges that China's AI ambitions present to the US-led West. Next up, we move to the Chinese economy. Despite economic growth, China's tax revenue has been on a decline, raising questions about the fiscal health of the world's second-largest economy. In 2024, China's national tax revenue dropped 3.4% to 17.5 trillion yuan, about $2.5 trillion US, according to Ministry of Finance data. That trend continued in the first quarter of 2025, with tax collections falling another 3.5% year-on-year. This contrasts sharply with GDP growth of 5% last year and 5.4% in the first quarter of 2025. Figures that should, in theory, boost tax revenue. So why the divergence? Well, putting aside the fact that GDP growth could be overcounted, and indeed is fueled by debt, according to a recent report published by Chinese financial media outlet Caixin this week, several other factors are at play. A key reason lies in deflationary pressures. China's consumer prices have hovered in negative territory, and producer prices have fallen for over a year and a half. The producer price index dropped 3.3% year-on-year in May, its sharpest fall since November. This matters because China relies heavily on value-added tax, VAT, which is levied at each stage of production. When prices drop rapidly, the added value and thus the taxable amount shrinks. VAT revenue alone fell 3.8% last year, contributing significantly to the broader decline. Additionally, expanded VAT refund policies introduced in 2022 have further reduced tax intake as more businesses claim credits to ease cash flow. China's economic pivot away from traditional industries such as real estate and mining is another contributor. These sectors were historically heavy tax contributors, but their decline, particularly in real estate, has eroded government income. Sales of pre-owned homes, now more common, generate less tax than property sales. And as a quick aside on this point, we note that these official numbers on tax revenue do not take into account extra budgetary revenue sources like land use sales, which have also plummeted in recent years due to the ongoing property crisis. Now, in contrast, emerging industries like new energy vehicles benefit from generous tax breaks. Since 2014, new energy vehicles have been exempt from key vehicle taxes, resulting in over 120 billion yuan in tax exemptions in 2024 alone. This is tens of billions of US dollars, and this is just one of many examples of state support for electric vehicles in China, and it is no wonder why these products are so competitive on international markets. As China continues to support high-growth sectors with incentives, the gap between headline economic growth and tax revenue may persist. For policymakers, the challenge now is maintaining fiscal stability while nurturing new engines for the economy, so argues the Caixin article. But this is yet another sign of how poor China's fiscal health is and how unsustainable its fiscal plans are for the years ahead. Deficits will continue to grow, debt will continue to surge, and slowdown will continue to accelerate. At some point, something has to give. Next up, we have one more development, quite an important development to cover, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you think you'll watch more of these in the future and you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. This will mean you're on top of the most up-to-date analysis as it's released, and it's a tremendous help for an independent channel like this. And if you'd like to go that extra mile, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the incredible support and for being part of this community as we try day by day to understand this consequential nation in the world. Okay, next up, as strategic competition intensifies, the United States is weighing emergency powers to bolster its rare earth supply chain, even as China consolidates control over global production and imposes sweeping export controls. This is something we've been watching closely over the last few weeks. It's been a big part of the ongoing US-China trade war, but hopefully regular viewers will now appreciate just how important this supply chain chokehold over rare earths is for China and its leverage over its trade partners, including the US, and the risks to supply chains, including for defense hardware. According to US-based Bloomberg, in a piece published yesterday, the Trump administration is considering invoking the Defense Production Act, DPA, to fund critical rare earth projects. The Cold War-era statute would allow the government to allocate funding and resources to domestic mining and processing operations, including support for MP Materials Corp., the only US rare earth producer. Deputy Defense Secretary Steve Feinberg is reportedly coordinating funding efforts. Push comes as China leverages its dominant position to exert pressure on global buyers. The UK-based Financial Times reports that foreign companies must now disclose sensitive commercial information when applying for export licenses for rare earths. These include production details, images of products and facilities, and confidential customer lists. China has not said it would abandon its export controls, and it was unclear if the country's latest trade truce with the US would affect the approval process for shipments of critical materials. Frank Eckhardt, CEO of German magnet maker Magnosphere, said the Chinese approach, quote, is about getting information officially rather than stealing it, end quote, raising alarms about intellectual property exposure. Now companies have a difficult choice: hand over IP to Beijing or risk having no access to rare earths and seeing their production grind to a halt. China's control over the sector extends beyond its borders too. A UK-based Reuters investigation published this week found that Chinese-backed militia now secures newly opened rare earth mines in Myanmar, a key supplier of heavy rare earth oxides to China. Nearly half of China's rare earth oxide imports this year have come from Myanmar, showing Beijing's reliance on the war-torn country even as it dominates processing capabilities. Meanwhile, Chinese producers are beginning to receive permission to export to select US clients after the recent US-China trade talks in London. Magnet maker JL Mag Rare Earth said it had been granted a license to export, stating that it is not allowed in military applications. According to Caixin, Beijing's licensing framework is designed to scrutinize end users, with stricter controls for technologies tied to defense. In response to the tightening supply, countries like Brazil are positioning themselves as alternatives. The president announced plans this week to attract global investment into Brazil's vast rare earth reserves, second only to China, highlighting the nation's ambition to play a greater role in global supply chains. However, it will take time for supply chains to diversify away from China to North and South America. Ripple effects are already being felt across the technology sector. Japanese financial media outlet Nikkei Asia reports that US suppliers to firms like Nvidia and Amazon are facing shortages of low-temperature solder paste, a key product made with a mineral which is now subject to Chinese export restrictions. Quote, "Our inventory is running low," end quote, one executive warned, adding that lead times are now measured in weeks. With strategic industries under strain and few near-term alternatives, the US may find itself racing against time and policy hurdles to secure a foothold in the critical rare earth supply chain race. If not, China will maintain its stranglehold on the sector, for now at least. But the West certainly needs to move, and move fast. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Friday. Have a restful weekend. There may be an extra episode this weekend, so I'll either see you this weekend or for a new week of updates on Monday.